Welcome to episode 83 of the Mountain Mantras Wellness and Life Lessons podcast. This podcast aims to inspire you with wellness and performance tips that you can incorporate into your daily life. I'm your host, Catherine Gaillet. Learn more about my work at makeeverythingfun.com. My guest today is Allison Pelissier. Allison is a consummate thinker, leader, healer, an entrepreneur. In other words, she is deeply dedicated to human evolution. Her business, Traveling Light LLC, is a community for Lucia N Light practitioners. Lucia N Light is a healing device that we'll be talking about that works on the brain-body system. It was originally developed in Austria by a neurologist and psychiatrist team. We're going to be talking today about some new online education opportunities that Allison will be sharing with you and inviting you to, as well as an amazing crowdfunding campaign that is geared to shed more light. Oh my gosh, that was such a pun. On the role of Lucia in bringing peace and balance to our world today. Thank you so much for joining us, Allison.
Absolutely, Catherine. Thanks for having me.
So I know you've been on other podcasts. You've been on the Luke Story podcast, and you told your story there. I'm like full of puns today. You told your story about learning about the light when you were over in Europe and how it changed your life. So could you give us sort of abbreviated, because your personal story is so powerful, about how you learned about the light, about how the light changed your personal life and then your trajectory in your business. So just a little snippet on that would be amazing.
Sure, absolutely. So the Lucia #3 is a pretty interesting light in the sense that I often say that it finds people rather than the other way around. And for me personally, that experience began when I was in grad school in the UK, and I was going through a really rough period myself. My father had passed away pretty recently, and a lot of kind of buried trauma had risen to the surface. So I was going through a lot of classical PTSD symptoms of not sleeping, nightmares, general anxiety, and difficulty focusing during the day. And nevertheless, I was continuing ahead with grad school and doing well. And one of my friends one day invited me to come to London to an art gallery. And I was intrigued and interested in trying something different, but I also had that kind of depression, anxiety, stress that people often have with PTSD, where it's really hard to actually get out of the house, even if you're really interested in doing something. And so I finally got up the mobilization and courage to go and just ran out of my house and just made it in time. And now in the gallery, the way they had it set up was that the light was in the back and nobody was sharing about what their experience was until after they tried it. So I had no idea what I was in for. And so I just went into this little room and closed my eyes. And within this experience, I really went to see my father who had passed away. I went through all these beautiful colors and patterns created by my own mind. And yeah, I visited with my father and we went out on this lake, and it was incredibly realistic and touching for me and very deep. And, you know, in the experience, he reminded me that it's okay to be happy and like, it's good to just be who I am and to continue my life. And that's what, you know, he wanted, not for me to be in this kind of stuck and sad space. And now having this kind of visionary experience in the light really actually brought me back to my body. So a lot of people when they're going through trauma actually disassociate from their body and disassociate from their life. So a lot of times, you know, even though I was doing well in school and I still had friends and, you know, was doing things, everything was so much more challenging than usual. And after the light experience, my nervous system actually finally got to relax. And it had been so wound up for so long that after this one session, I started sleeping through the night again. I hadn't been sleeping for about 6 to 8 months through the night with the nightmares and everything. So I got my first full night's rest, and I just really felt back in my body, back in my power, and I felt alive. And like a lot of people have kind of come out of the freeze of trauma. I was like, oh, I'm alive. It's amazing. Here I am. I can feel everything, the richness of sensation, the richness of color in my reality. It all just kind of came forward. And so that was the beginning of my journey with the Lucia.
It's a beautiful story. Thank you for telling this. And what it really, oh my gosh, I'm so full of puns. Like it sheds light on what it sheds light on is like a mantra for me, which is that if people listening think that the word trauma does not apply to them, well, first of all, they haven't been listening to my podcast because I've really spent about 24 episodes getting into modalities that treat trauma. I've been focusing a lot on something that I discovered called brain spotting. But then you talked about how the light ends up finding people, and I found the light, or the light found me. And then that leads me to mantra number 2, which is that there are many ways to work through trauma, right? Because we all have trauma. I like to say that trauma is just anything that isn't nurturing to the nervous system. So it doesn't have to be something overly dramatic. In fact, we are all going through what's many people are calling existential trauma right now during this 2020 COVID-19 challenge. So there are many ways to go through trauma and work it out, but a light shining on your face, right? I'm sure for listeners to this podcast, and they probably have heard me talking about somatic experiencing and brain spotting and all other kinds of therapeutic interventions. But this is the first time these listeners and viewers have heard about this light. So a brief description of just sort of what it means to have the Lucia lights interact with our nervous system would be amazing. I have one right behind me. I've experienced it. I'm a true believer, but having you explain it would be wonderful.
Absolutely. So, yes. And first of all, definitely, I think that everyone goes through certain different types of trauma. And also, depending on your own childhood history and developmental trauma and different things like that, situations that you're going through in the present can affect you in different ways. And that's also, a different result of trauma. And as for the Lucia light, it uses a solid light, which is a halogen, and it's a pretty wide spectrum light, and it's warm. So it has a thermal quality to it. And so you have your eyes closed, and sessions begin with this warmth. And this is a very kind of primal resonance for us. It's a feeling of being in the sun. There's a feeling of safety and of knowingness. For some people, it can feel a little bright because it's something a little different. But as you kind of breathe into it, it actually starts really working to open and relax your nervous system. And then comes the flickering light. And so it's a type of entrainment using LEDs. And you have your eyes closed for this. So there's no way that your eyes can be damaged or influenced in any way on that level. It's not really working with your eyes. It's working through your eyes into your brain. And the flickering light. So anytime we have an outside rhythmic stimulation, we start to actually entrain to it. That is, our systems entrain to it. Same with, actually if a mother is holding a baby and the mother's heartbeat is actually an entrainment that is soothing to the baby's system. So there's lots of different types of entrainment that we can listen to. This is why like shamanic drumming and things like that also get people into really relaxed and deep states. And with the flickering light, they found that, if we primarily go, our brain waves actually go from into alpha and then lower into the theta state, and then ultimately into a harmonic state of consciousness. So something else very unique about the Lucia is it uses square waves, and the square waves actually invite the brain to go into harmonics. So that means that similar to a singing bowl where there's different notes on different octaves, but they all sound in resonance together, your brain waves are actually finding a way to line up. And this is a type of coherence within your system that really allows the nervous system to deeply relax. So the Lucia number 3 is a very interesting combination of intensity and relaxation at the same time. The colors and patterns that you visually see are very stimulating in a certain way, and they keep your mind active and occupied in terms of just the wow factor of all these beautiful bright colors that you see, even though it's just white light. And then the rhythmic pulsing over time just really starts working to lower and relax and relax and relax your nervous system further until it really lets go. And generally, excuse me, in sessions, you can see about 3/4 of the way through, there's a deep relaxation that occurs, and it's palatable. You can actually physically see how people's muscles really relax. Sometimes there's a big sigh that happens. It can be audible even, and it's very similar to kind of the process of going to sleep in terms of unwinding. But what it's actually doing is slowly relaxing your nervous system instead of just dropping quickly into sleep, which allows kind of any tensions or difficult, I call them like discordant vibrations in your field to start to let go. And so that's where we store old trauma, or, even if you're driving in a car, say, and someone cuts you off and you have this sudden jolt, we actually, if we don't move that out of our nervous system, we actually store it in our nervous system, and it becomes kind of part of this like background chaos or noise. Or another way to look at it is kind of like having, when you're driving a car and like all these bugs hit your windscreen over time, your windshield, when you finally clean it, it's like the clean windshield effect. And that's very similar with the Lucia, in the sense that we kind of hold on to all of these intense moments in our lives and during the day. And then once we have this chance to relax in a state where we feel really blissful and inspired, then we can just let that all go and it melts away.
Well, I like that metaphor of sort of cleaning off a bunch of dead bugs from the windshield during a Lucia light session. When you were talking about the deep relaxation, I mean, some sessions just make me giggle, right? Mm-hmm. Because, it is amazing. And the people that I've had sessions with are like, that's just a white light, because you are seeing, and I know there's the halogen, which is this, it feels like the sun. And then the flickering light is the white light. But because a lot of people end up seeing, beautiful colors and patterns and things like that, it's like, really, that's only a white light. But I'm just going to get out of my little giddy state for a moment there and summarize something very profound and meaningful that you said around the brain states for healing. And that is that, we need these slower wave brain states like alpha and theta, getting into delta, which is the sleeping brainwave state. But we need to be in those brainwave states in order to heal, right? Our nervous systems. There are a lot of people who I work with that are very, very bright, and they think they can just think their way out of all of their problems, and that's like a beta, state, right? Like, I'm just going to fix this, and it's going to be fine, and I'm going to relax. And through all of my studies, I have finally gotten to the conclusion, also by experimenting on myself, that no healing can exist unless we are in those brain states that support healing, like alpha and theta.
Yeah, and really deeper understandings can come through too. So that's the other thing, like in terms of creativity, if we're still in kind of a reactive state, even if we have a very strong mental body and are very intelligent, if we're still reacting to life and coming from that state and trying to figure out a solution from the mental state, we're not really seeing the whole picture of what's available to us. Even Albert Einstein used to actually just take a spoon and hold it up over a plate. And that would be his type of like meditation, recalibration, activation of creativity. He would wait until he started falling asleep. And then at that point, he would drop the spoon and it would wake him up, and he would have incredible insights, because there's so much more happening. Kind of the mental body is only like one layer of our awareness, and it's a very powerful layer, and we can think through a lot of things logically. But there's other layers deeper in our system that are analyzing things on a much bigger scale. And so we might come up with different ideas or solutions that can save us so much more time and are very creative and unique and individualistic. And that can't come from the mind space alone.
Yeah, I will tell you, when things start opening up again and we can start reducing the physical distancing that we're doing right now, I'm excited to work with people on creativity, because I do think that the Lucia light is a fabulous opportunity to open up those states of creativity.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. It's like, you have to get your nervous system work done. If you're holding on to a lot of that stress, you can't access those higher states of creativity. And the Lucia light does a great job of both relaxing you and inspiring you. So you're relaxed enough to feel creative and feel inspired to take on that creative work, and the colors and patterns and visuals and shamanic experiences that you may have in the light are also very encouraging for creativity.
And because you just talked about shamanic healing, I think a lot of people, when they hear that, they think of plant medicines and taking external agents to induce a state or to create healing experience. One of the things that I think is so beautiful about the Lucia Light is it is healing from the inside out truly, in that you're not putting anything in your body. You're shining a light on your pineal gland, and all this experiencing is all this experience, whether it's healing or creativity or a combination, or all the visions that you talked about, and healing from our ancestors, right? I mean, from those that have passed on. Like, that's really, really deep stuff, but it's all just done from having a light shining on us. So I wanted to just emphasize that, because I think a lot of times people are kind of looking for that next thing that they can take or do or whatever to shift them in some way that maybe makes it like seem easier, because it's like, oh, I'm going to take that miracle pill. And I wanted you just to talk about how that, what you teach, and then we're going to get into what you're doing with your online education and inviting more people to learn about the light. But the message that I've heard you say over and over that I think is so beautiful is that it all is coming from the inside out. And the light is just kind of allowing you to access the healing power that one already has inside.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's very cornerstone to the Lucia. And, again, with light and being a reflection, right? It's actually a reflection of who you are. People ask me, well, what are the colors and patterns and things mean? And that's individual. That's up to you. I mean, even how you feel about the color blue is going to be different than somebody else. And whether or not you see that is also going to be a testament to your journey at that time. And what the Lucia is really about is reminding you of that incredible beauty within that each person has. We're all so unique, and we all have such amazing abilities here. And, throughout our life path, certain things may have been, held back or pushed away or discouraged. And, the Lucia Light, as we really relax our nervous system, relax those walls around the vulnerability and beauty that exists within us, we can really shine our true colors and true lights without fear. And that is the best thing we can do really in this life. And, often I think we look, as you said, to outer substances or experiences, or, even like entheogens, or even a healer, someone else to do this for us, when really our greatest power and the, message for this whole generation and this time period is really that we are our own teacher. The best coaches, teachers, mentors are going to give you information so that you can look at yourself, because you know yourself better, deeper, more truthfully than anyone else. And if you don't know that yet, you have the chance to start discovering it. And wherever you are along that pathway, you can just know that the answers lie within you. And the best teachers are really holding space and caring for you in a way that you can come to those conclusions yourself.
So important for people to hear. Yeah, you don't go to somebody else to have them fix you. We are our own healers. So important.
Yeah. And you don't need to take any medicine to understand the answer either. You can also just, work with Lucia tools like this, and then go into a meditation practice. I mean, even just a few experiences with the Lucia can really help move your brainwaves, like help you understand. It's like finding a pathway to a deep meditative state. And then once your brain kind of knows what that is and what that feels like, I mean, the Lucia is a little more relaxed and colorful version of that. But when you go to sit in meditation or before sleep, when you really want to just take that moment for yourself to tune in deeply, you can remember how it feels to be in the Lucia and bring yourself there on your own. And ultimately, it's not a replacement for a meditation practice or anything else. It's something in its own that's inspiring all the other things in your life.
I love that. And so what popped into my mind as you were telling that story about how, so what I'm thinking of here is that Michael Pollan, basically, I mean, he was always my hero in the world of food and eating more plants and not too much and all that kind of stuff. And I saw him speak and really just fell in love with his work. Then he came out with this book on plant medicine and kind of went through, but what he was saying is that what's so beautiful about those experiences is they allow you in normal states, meaning in your regular states, when you want to drop in, because you've been there, you can get there faster and you can remember. And I have experienced that. Like if I'm trying to fall back asleep or whatever, obviously my eyes are closed. I bring the Lucia experiences that are not happening in that moment back to me, and I find it very, very relaxing.
Mm-hmm.
So Allison, you're like the Michael Pollan, like what Michael Pollan did for, plant medicine in terms of making it a way more mainstream. So many people have read his book, How to Change Your Mind, and a lot of awareness has been built in these last few years. I feel like you are doing that for Lucia. You're doing these online education, these webinars, this learning platform that you're doing. So basically, I'm just saying that you're the Michael Pollan, as he was to plant medicine. You are going to be to the Lucia Light. So tell viewers and listeners because you're inviting the general public to a webinar where you're going to be talking about the nervous system and probably the context of what we're going through right now as a collective community, and ways that we can manage our nervous system in a more natural way. Do you want to talk about that webinar so that people might, they're probably like, oh my gosh, this sounds really cool. I haven't heard of it. How do I learn more?
Absolutely. So yeah, as I kind of did my own meditation and since the beginning of this crisis and chaos here, I've really tuned into what would be most helpful for people. And it's really come down to the nervous system for me, that, the nervous system is our basic regulation. And if we're not aware of even what that is, we're not really in our bodies, we're not attuned with what we're putting out into the world. And, things like isolation, being confined with just your family, taking on multiple roles, children aren't in school. There's so many additional pressures. Even though there's certain things that you don't have to do, like drive as much, there's also can be some freedom in those that you didn't even realize beforehand. So it's definitely been a tumultuous time for folks. And I've really felt called to share, more knowledge about the nervous system, because I really think, again, knowledge is power. And as we learn more about ourselves and the ways that we regulate, it actually works hand in hand with our meditation and awareness practices, because we have this kind of internal somatic awareness of where's my body, what am I feeling? And then the meditative practice helps us to not judge it, to notice the subtle differences, to notice the subtle cues that help us realize that something is shifting and to come back to ourselves. And these are super important tools. I mean, especially I think for parents or for CEOs or people who are really influencing others and have others working under them or that are being really directly influenced by them. This is a really important part of that type of leadership, is being able to maintain our own homeostasis. And so my offering to the community is a webinar, and it's actually going to be a series of classes. And the first one will be free, and it's going to be around learning about polyvagal theory and the introduction to the nervous system. And then there will be 4 additional courses in covering different topics. So the next one will be more about attachment theory and developmental trauma and understanding what complex PTSD is. And again, even if you aren't that deep in any of these situations, you've done all the self-work, you've come so far yourself, there's other people in your life that, again, if you know more about this, you can be more compassionate towards, you can be more supportive of. And that goes hand in hand, because when you're more compassionate and more loving, you're actually regulating your own nervous system and therefore improving your immunity and health. So we'll go into the intro with the polyvagal theory and nervous system. And then the second week will be more about the attachment theory, attachment styles, and developmental trauma. Week 3 is going to go more into different levels like proprioception, exteroception, interoception, like the fabric of our reality is what I like calling it. So we have all of these really amazing sensors that we perceive reality through, and our reality actually changes depending how we're perceiving things. So for example, if you're in a kind of a shutdown or a triggered state, someone who has a kind of blank, just normal face could look angry or aggressive to you. And so your literal world changes depending on where you're at internally. And so we'll go into that. And then we're going to talk more about kind of developing your identity and really understanding what the identity you've developed and how that relates to addictions and patterns of less skillful coping mechanisms. And then we'll go into the final week will be more about from survive to thrive, and really focusing on the tools and technologies to help us maintain the flow state. So to get to the flow state and maintain the flow state. And the way that the layout's going to go is that I will have, a little breath work activity. So breath is like the number one way to hack right into our autonomic nervous system and the things that the processes that are happening without our conscious awareness. We can bring that to consciousness through breath. So there'll be lots of breathwork activities through the different courses. I have different journal entries and different reflections, guided meditations, and it's going to be a really fun journey. And if you have a Lucia number 3, that'll be wonderful. It'll be a great add-on to have during the experience. And if you don't, that's totally fine too. And it'll be very accessible for you. And we'll have lots of different tools. And there's other technologies. A lot of people bring me their technology. I'm kind of a magnet for that. So I'm quite aware of what other cool technologies are out there that can work specifically with regulating the nervous system. And again, they're technologies that aren't any kind of that you can stay totally sober for, because I think that's also really important. I really believe in plant medicine and find it to be very sacred and ceremonial. And I think done in the right context with the right support, it can be super powerful. But what I feel really called for people right now is, again, this understanding of these more natural ways that you can work with yourself. And it's a level of self-care. And as we bring up this self-care and self-awareness, we really are able to shine brighter, because there's this kind of intimacy that we develop within ourselves that I feel is so necessary for showing up as our authentic selves. And you can see, when people don't love themselves and they're talking, there's a harshness, there's an edge to how they're presenting themselves. And for me, it also really relates to the meditation and awakening process that's happening for so many people right now, where they're realizing that certain ways of living and being don't serve their greater happiness. And, we're here to thrive and to care for each other. And this is our time to really stand in our power. And if you don't have that gentleness and care for yourself, your message isn't going to go nearly as far or be nearly as powerful.
Yeah, I think it's really important for all of us to be thinking about this time truly as a transformational time. And we can all come out of this. Yes, there are many of us that are experiencing all kinds of hardships and grief and all things along that spectrum of challenge. However, there's also, in an adversity, there's opportunity, right? And so that comes from David Grand, who is a previous guest, the founder of Brain Spotting. But it really is an opportunity for us to look at how we can transform. And when you were talking about that journey through this teaching that you're doing, from polyvagal to attachment, addiction, and then going into flow, you're talking about some of my favorite topics, and I've experienced you as a teacher, so I know it's going to be amazing. I know you're very, very nurturing, and you're very, very intelligent and smart, and just the way that you present things is going to be great for people. You've also created a quiz. Do you want to talk about, because I think this has to do with creativity and how your creativity is way up there on the scale. You came up with this beautiful idea for a quiz so that when people join the webinar, they have a sense of where they're at and where their nervous system is at. You want to talk just really briefly, because it's just so fun that you came up with that.
Absolutely. So yeah, part of this was really this self-inquiry and looking deeper in ourselves to see where we're at. And so I thought about the nervous system, and I thought about seasons of the year, because for me, that the nervous system is in a state of change. And so I don't really like or prefer labeling things too intensely, because that means something about a permanence, and a lot of children get kind of labeled in certain ways at quite young ages. And that's something that continues to reflect upon their identity in the way that others see them for so long. So I think looking at the nervous system as being in different seasons can help us understand that it's something that can shift. It's just, if anyone has experienced the death of a loved one, I mean, going into the winter season of really needing to be deep within yourself and in your heart, and to really feel the depth of that sadness is real, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a natural reaction. It's just the part of it is noticing what it is. And so, and then learning from there, when you're ready, the tools to start shifting from winter into spring. How can we move from winter to spring? And maybe in spring, I won't tell the whole quiz, I'll let you take it. But there's a lot of different ways that you get just a few questions to kind of tune into what season your nervous system is in. And then for me, what's really fun about it is because season 5 is the flow state. And for me, that's what really matters, because really being in the flow state is ultimately where we want to be, because it doesn't mean we're stuck in any one season, but we're actually able to find the flexibility to move through them. So we're not putting up walls or disassociating from our reality to not feel the depth of what we feel. We're feeling it all the way, and we're acknowledging that, and we're allowed, therefore, able to be empathic and, compassionate with people without, totally losing our center. And we can, seamlessly kind of move back into our center from there. So the quiz is just a fun little way to have a peek into where your nerves are at.
And thank you for not putting labels on people that they're going to absorb and identify with. And I love the idea of it being like seasons are always changing. So whatever happens to somebody in terms of what their quiz result is, it doesn't mean that it's going to be like that the next day. And the idea of this whole flow state, keeping things in motion, is beautiful. And again, I'm not surprised that your creativity is at this high level that it's at. I recently read Stephen Kotler's book on flow, The Rise of Superman. So folks, flow is just amazing. And I'm sure there's people thinking, okay, well, how can I experience Lucia? And right now, because of a lot of the physical distancing, which hopefully won't last for too much longer, it's been harder to see practitioners that have the practitioner system. And of course, because of your creativity, you came up with this great idea to get home portals into more people's hands. And that's this whole idea of this crowdfunding and sharing campaign. Can we talk a little bit about that? And folks, don't worry, we're going to provide links at the end, and I'll put them in the show notes. So if you're like, how can I get my hands on the quiz? How can I register for this webinar? How can I learn more about the crowdfunding? We will do all of that. But there's just so much here. I wanted to make sure we talk about this incredible campaign that you've got going on, or that's about to launch.
Absolutely. Thanks, Catherine. Yeah, so a colleague and myself have thought deeply about different ways that we can get the Lucia out there. And what's really come to the forefront is having a type of rental program. So we're going to do a crowdfunding through Kickstarter to raise the money. And basically the way it will work is that you'll give a contribution for a 1-week rental, and then it will actually include a program so that you have different ways to work with the light. So within 1 week, you can do so much for recalibrating your nervous system, or if you're already in a really high state, for enhancing your creativity and taking everything to the next level in the flow state. So it's like really wherever you're at, the cool thing about the light is it meets you there. It's very balancing and bringing you back to your center, and every session is really different. And so since you can't necessarily go to a practitioner right now, or maybe you just want to have that deep dive time at home, and, life's hectic enough and you just want this, to do it in your bed before sleeping and not worry about, driving afterwards and all of that. It's just a great way to tune in. And there'll be other options too. So if you want to do one-on-one coaching with myself or another practitioner, you can get that support from your home. But it's just a very exciting idea for us as a way to get it out there. And it's going to be called Rainbow Light. And so our idea is kind of like the rainbow is being sent over to you, and at the end of the rainbow is a little light for you. And so it's really fun and playful. And that's what it's all about for us and that's why I love your podcast and everything you're doing here, is making it fun again, right? Because there's so much that we get stuck up into. And I think that's, again, one of the real benefits of the Lucia. It's something different. It's not just like this headset you put on and you follow this specific criteria. It's an adventure. It's beautiful. It's something that you can experience with your partner and go deeper together. It's, something that you can do for yourself. That's something you're going to really look forward to. It's a really special treat. And we'll have a community where you can share about your experiences and, relate to each other, ask questions, and there'll be, we have a little training already online so you can learn how to work with it and to use it. And from there, it's infinity and beyond in terms of how you want to work with it and how you let it into your life.
Well, I love rainbows. So I love that. I love Buzz Lightyear, right? Infinity and Beyond. But the rainbow is so great. And it's wonderful because when I listened to your interview on the Luke Story podcast, he did get to the financials at the end. Like, they're expensive lights, right? They come from Austria. They're years and years in development. They're, handcrafted, like high quality. And so they're expensive. And right now, and we can go to your website, Allison, and learn about practitioners around the country. But you and I are in little mountain towns, and there might be listeners that are not near one of the practitioners, and it's just not feasible. So again, this is a brilliant idea. It's almost like this thing that we were talking about where there's opportunity and adversity. So we're going through this issue right now with COVID-19, and now you figure it out, or it was probably already floating out there as an idea, but the push, the impetus to get this idea out there where people can have a light in their homes for a week and try it. It is one of those things where I think people do need to experience it, because when you talk about, a light that feels like the sun and it's warming and warming, and then there's flickering, and then there's this beautiful experience of images and colors and potential journeys and things like that. People are just, they don't get it until they experience it. So what you've come up with is great.
Yeah, it'll be a great way to kind of tune in for people. And then also, if it's something you really enjoy, you can go to a practitioner locally once things ease up a little bit. You could just go once a month to kind of have a light tune-up. Or, or if you really feel called, you can work with it yourself. You can purchase one and, pay for it over time. But absolutely, I'm proud to work with a company that treats the workers properly and doesn't outsource to Asia and things like that are very accepted in even the transformational tech type communities. And, and the quality of the lights they're supposed to last for a lifetime. So it's really made well, but this will give, a lot more people opportunity to work with it that may not have in the past, or may feel a little hesitant about making such a big purchase without trying it.
And Allison, you're the U.S. distributor for the light, and you've gone way beyond the role of being a distributor, and you've really taken on that healer and educator and advocate for this whole system. What I think is wonderful is this program that you have where when people purchase a light, they become part of an educational community and part of a connected community where people can share music, they can share experiences, they can share stories. The platform allows for audio, video, text. So what was the inspiration? It's beautiful, but the idea of really connecting people around this and making it be more of a transformational shift, you're basically acting as a change agent in the world. So tell us a little bit more about the plans for the future for this online community.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was really motivated to do all of this through my love for community. And really, it's always been kind of funny to me to be a distributor, to be in kind of sales technically, because I feel like the light kind of makes its own decision with people, and I'm just kind of here to help the process. But ultimately for me, the deepest connection we can have is our change. And that comes through community, through relating, through sharing, through growing as a community and encouraging others to show up. And I really feel like that's my mission in this world, is to, encourage people to step forward in their highest. And so by having this wonderful community, we have a great way to interact. And, also for me, it's really important, the quality standards, right? That, people don't just buy this and not know what they're doing and, accidentally make it too intense for someone and they don't like it, or things like that. So we really have this practitioner training so that you can go through these different steps and learn how to hold space with integrity and how to show up and work with different clients who may have different experiences or situations arise, and how to be supportive, and to show up. Because I mean, that's the other thing during a lot of this time, if you lost your job or you're redirecting in life, helping hold space for people's transformation is something that will just continue to blossom. And I feel like more and more people will be called to work with the Lucia Light or with other, technologies or ways of healing to hold that space for others. So it's an honor and pleasure, and it'll be fun to see how it grows and changes over time. But currently we have an online platform, and we have different courses, and also part of the community vibe is that anyone who joins who wants to share their own course for our community is welcome to do so, which is a small percentage going back to the platform to support the platform's growth. But ultimately, it's about a place where everyone can shine in whatever capacity they want to show up.
I love how we've been using words like shine and brilliant and things like that. It's so fun. And again, I have seen firsthand how creative you are. And I wonder how the light is assisting you in all of that. And with the training, I want to emphasize to listeners and viewers that the Lucia number 3 is very complex. When you think of a light, it's like, okay, this thing is driven by its own computer. There's 150 or something protocols or sessions is probably a better word. And there's different intensities, and people go through a demo to see how their nervous system reacts to the light. So I just wanted to say, because you've been talking about the training that you do and the special touches that you add to this community, it's because this isn't just a light. This is developed by a neurologist and a psychiatrist and has been helpful in treating thousands of people. And so it's not just a light. It's really way more than that. that doesn't quite do it. So you can add to that.
It's one of those ineffable things. You can't quite put it into words, but it's something beyond. And that's what we try to work with, is creating a container for that possibility of beyond to really come through.
Ineffable. That's the perfect word for it, because when people say, oh, what is it like? It's like, I can't describe it. You just have to do it. Yeah. And that's why I think having this crowdfunding campaign and allowing people to experience it in their homes, in safety and comfort and all that, with the support that you're providing on top of it, is just a beautiful combination of and a way to get it out to the world, even more than what Michael Pollan did.
Wow, thank you. Jeez.
So let's go through some links where people can find more information about you. I know you're all over Instagram, so talk a little bit about Facebook and Instagram, and where we can find out about the quiz and your website and the webinars and the crowdfunding. So just kind of go through all that, knowing, folks that are watching and listening, that these will all be in the show notes. But if you're out for a jog or whatever, and I'll put a special link. I'll do makeeverythingfun.com/Lucia. So LUCIA. So all of that will be there, but Allison, I'll let you go through.
Yeah, absolutely. So our main page is LuciaLightExperience.com. Our Facebook page is Traveling Light Machine. And the Instagram is also at Traveling Light Machine. And that was my first very original project when I got the light and started traveling all over with it. It was so fun. And I have a link tree from the Instagram that has all the other links, but there's also a link to the webinar on the Lucia Light Experience page, and I'll be posting more about it on social media and other places. And I'm also going to be giving a short couple exercises for relaxing the nervous system with Find My Zen, and they will also be hosting the webinar series. So Find My Zen is a great space online where you can learn about different yoga classes or courses, or online or in person. Right now, everything's online, but really great resource and platform. So I'm excited to be working with them. And as well, I have one more exciting thing coming out. There's one of my favorite artists, actually, is Amani from Desert Dwellers, and Liquid Bloom is his other side project, and he's releasing a whole CD of different meditations that go with music, and I'm creating light sessions that go with the meditations and the music, which is going to be amazing. And I also was got to be featured on one of the meditations. So that's coming out. I think it'll be out by the time. So we'll include that link in the show notes as well if you would like to dive into a meditation with me on your inner gardens. So lots of fun stuff. I'll send you all the links. And yeah, Lucia Light Experience is kind of the main hub if you want to check us out from there.
Oh, that's so cool. And that's really amazing. I didn't know that you were doing this music combined with the sessions, because people can experience, the synesthesia, which is, the combination of different senses, the sound and the light. And we didn't even mention that a lot of sessions involve music. And so a practitioner would choose music. And I'll just say really quick, I didn't like some music that I had on during one of my sessions. And so I sort of flicked off my headsets, and I got to listen to the frequency of the light. And that was really cool too.
Yeah, it's very interesting even without music. So music is a whole other component to it, and they really interact powerfully together. And, also without any music, you really are more in tune with where you're at in your head. So it's cool. All fun journeys.
Well, thank you so much for all of the amazing things that you're doing in this world. And in some ways, this whole COVID thing really kind of put you in your place there in Boulder, and you had to put all of this together, and you're bringing this out into the world. Otherwise, you'd be traveling around with the light, which is really, really amazing. But it's just so beautiful to see how you're basically walking the talk of this idea of making the most of this time and making it a transformational time, because you've done all of this while we've been sheltering in place. So thank you for joining us from your beautiful mountain town of Boulder to my beautiful mountain town of Sun Valley. And I'm so excited to share this episode with the world.
Oh, thank you so much, Catherine. I really appreciate you. And thanks for this interview. It was beautiful. All your support and appreciation. Matters a lot. Take care.